Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for another one of our Training Tuesdays. Today's session is on Dynamics GP and various business controls as the economy starts coming back to life and easing of government restrictions on businesses and their actions. On the line with me today is Brittany Prepinitsky. Brittany, I'll let you continue on to introduce yourself, and then I will give you control.
Beautiful. Thanks, Scott. So as Scott said, my name is Brittany Prepinitsky. I am the support manager here at Endeavour. I'm also, I guess, one of your hosts today for our session today. And as saying, this is a little bit of a session just to give you some ideas and tips and tricks on to how to set up some controls and help us with our cash flow as we go through this new time that we're all trying to navigate through. All right, so as we're all seeing GP, I wanted to go over a few topics today just to help us out with our cash techniques. I tried to use these techniques with my husband so I could get a pool in my backyard. However, he was not so receptive to these. So hopefully, as long as it's not your spouse and trying to get a pool in the backyard, hopefully these can help you out. Use some of them, all of them, pick and choose. It's a little bit of a buffet going on today. So the first one I actually wanted to talk about today was what we can do with budgets. Okay, so I know we're a little outside of our normal budgeting season, but maybe we're doing some addendums to budgets or maybe kind of doing some new predictions to where we might sit as we're coming back into this new sphere and as we're raging in stage 2 in Ontario and other stages in the other parts of the country. So if you haven't used budgets before in GP, they do sit in your card section of financial, okay? And you kind of have one of two ways to actually create a budget inside of GP. You'll notice that if you have using Microsoft Dynamics GP, which means you're actually going to do each individual account and do them by hand, okay? Or you have this great budget wizard for Excel, okay? Well, essentially what that wizard does is if you follow along with its steps, it's super easy. Follow along with the steps. It actually dumps out an Excel spreadsheet of all the accounts you want to budget for. You populate the values that you'd like in there, and it allows you to take the exact Excel spreadsheet and import it back in, okay? You can also import your changes back in as well, okay? So if you use the budget using for GP, okay, you're actually going to get a window that looks like this one. And I'm actually going to pull to one of my accounts here, which is my revenue account, 0000. Oops, helps when I can type. 4. I'm actually going to go to my sales account here. I actually decided to budget for just my P&L. You can budget for balance sheet, P&L, both, a mix and mingle, just a section of accounts, whatever works best for your business. Now, just a friendly reminder, if you are budgeting for credit balance accounts, don't forget to make them a negative. That's a little bit of a gotcha that gets you when you do budgets. So if you notice here, I've budgeted nothing for the first 3 periods of the year, but I've started to budget $10 million for period 4, $50,000 for period 5, and $60,000 for period 6. Okay, and now you can do that in any account you want. We can actually go set this up on an expense account as well. And I'm just going to show you how easy that is. Now, if you remember that, oops, I'm just going to hop down my chart of accounts here, down to salaries and wages as my first expense. And now remember that our expenses are a debit balance, so I get to put them in as a positive versus that revenue account you saw me put it in the negative. Okay, I'm going to budget my $60,000 here and $70,000. Okay, so now I have my budgets in, and you can modify these budgets at any time, or you can also lock these budgets. So this is something that a lot of people don't know about. If you're already using budgets, you can actually lock these. You can say, you know what, our budgets are stagnant, we don't want them to change. And the other part of it too is you don't have any oops. If someone's trying to come in here to take a look at it and they may have accidentally changed something or the phone rang, whatever the case may be, you can actually have a lock here to just protect yourself. So if you see this little lock here, you can put a password on it. My suggestion is don't make the password like I'm doing right now. But you can actually lock your budgets in here, so you can't make any modifications without the password. Okay, so that's an oldie but a goodie. It's been in GP for a long time. You might say to me, that's great. I made these beautiful budgets. They're the most beautiful budgets I've ever seen in the world. What do I do with them? It's a great question. You can use them inside of MR. You can pull your budgets inside of MR, and you can start doing those comparisons of actuals versus budgets, or you can start kind of using your budget numbers to kind of predict where you might end up at the end of the year. All those normal tools that we're used to doing with budgets, you can pull inside of MR. You might say to me, you know what, Brittany, MR is not my gig. We use SSRS. We love it. We think it's the best thing ever. Great. Budgets can be pulled inside of SSRS as well. If you remember, one of the great things about SSRS is you can pull from any table inside of GP. Budgets has its own table. Budgets actually creates its own set of chart of accounts so that it actually has those budgets. So you can do that budget versus actual in both SSRS, in MR, or even Excel reporting if that's where you love to sit as well. Happy to kind of go in any of those three. Okay, so you can use those budgets. But what if you want to take those budgets even further and say, you know what, I have these budgets, but you know what, I don't want to just report on if someone's gone over their budget. I want to actually stop that at the source. So typically, when we want to kind of stop that at the source, we want to actually start that from the purchase orders or the payables modules coming in. We just don't want people to issue out purchase orders for more money than we have budget for. And I say, that's great. So let's actually pick on this account 5100 that I've put a budget here for $50,000 in the period of April. There's a couple of things you can do. If you joined us a couple weeks ago, we actually did workflow that we can, start doing some of those controls through workflow. What if you're not ready to go all the way to workflow yet? Perfect. You have this little setup. It actually came out core, I think, in GP 2013 R2. It's called purchase order enhancements. Okay, we also have purchase orders encumbrance as well. Okay, so one thing is you can actually activate this approval setup. And what this approval setup allows you to do is you can actually set each user with how much they can approve for themselves. So I have Dinah say here, here's $100. Myself, I'm actually logged in as system administrator. I gave myself a privilege of $50,000. And lesson user 2 is actually the person I report to. Okay, so if you're not quite ready to go into workflows and everything you can do, you can have a watered down version of a workflow, which is called purchase order approval user setup. So it literally means I cannot print a purchase order if it's over my approval level. If you notice here, my approval level is $50,000. Okay, so if I actually go in there and put in my purchase order, put in my purchase order, and apparently I have to remember how to put one in. Put a purchase order in there, and let's go pick up my item. If you guys remember, my approval amount was $50,000. So let's actually put that at $60,000. Oh, or $6 million, because apparently I like zeros. You'll notice here when I attempt to go hit print, save. I actually can't print an unapproved purchase order. It is over my transaction limit, so I can't actually print it to get it to go out to my supplier or get it out to go to anyone. Now you can set users as unlimited approvers as well. They have no no limit. They can kind of approve whatever they want. Okay, so you'll notice that my approval status is set to unapprove. If I try to approve it, it actually exceeds my approval authority, so I can't skip over it. I legitimately need to go have somebody who has approval over me to approve my purchase order. So we can start kind of controlling our cash or our spending through this. One of the other methods you actually have to yourself is encumbrance. What encumbrance does is it actually looks at the account you set per line. If you're in your purchase order here, it will actually look at the budget that is set to this account that you're about to book it to, and if it pushes it over the budget we set for that account, if you remember that budget window we had from previously, if it goes over this budget, it's going to keep popping up a warning saying that you're going over your budget. Do you want to go over your budget? Okay, so you can have encumbrances set up that way as well. Okay, so you have a couple of two options there. Now, those are kind of two ways you can start helping control your cash flow going out. Now, what if we just want to save money? No, let's take advantage of those payment terms that people give us, especially on our payable side. Guys, I promise I'm not picking on payables today. I just really love spending money. Ask my husband. No, I'm just kidding. Is what those payment terms can do for us. And actually, GP enhanced their payment terms in GP 2015. Okay, so let's go pick on a vendor here. I'm going to pick on my Ace Travel again just because they're so much fun. So we definitely want to go take a look at those payment terms that we have available to us. Now, if we remember, our payment terms are in our options, okay? So I actually have payment terms of net 30 in here. I have my payment terms of net 30, okay? So when I have them in here, you can actually also do a couple new calculations inside of here, okay? So inside of there, you'll notice that we have a couple new things. It used to be our net days is net 30. We can also do end of month, next month, total amount of months we want to give it, or month and day. I want to pay it on the 15th of every month. So when you do those, we can also use a little bit more of a complicated one. Okay, that we also want to have a discount on here. That if we pay it, let's say we're going to have net 10, 5%, net 30. Okay, we want to start taking advantage of those. Okay, it's due in 30 days. Okay, I'm going to get 5%, 5% if I pay it before 10 days. Okay, and we calculate the discount on just the purchase or the discount, freight, all of it you pick. You can actually do those as well. You can also use this in conjunction of, that's a very typical one we would see is, net 10, 5%, net 30. You can actually say, if I pay it before the 15th of the month, give me 5% off. So you can set up all these different payment terms. You might say to me, that's great. I now know that I have payment terms and it's going to calculate it when I have it, when I enter an invoice. But how do I know that when I do a check run? My check runs are so big that I want to be able to take advantage of these discount dates. Perfect. We actually can do that right inside of our building and batch function the same way we do our checks all the time. Okay, so if you've never used the build a batch section and you always go into edit payment batch, check out the build batch section. I'm actually going to build a new batch here called Brittany. Sorry. And we're actually going to select based on when we can actually get those apply dates. Okay, so we have a couple options in here, but we definitely want to take any qualifying discounts before this date. Okay, and we can also do it down here that we can have a due date or discount date cutoff. We can say we want our due date to be before the end of the month. So we're going to say it's before April. And our discount cutoff date, we want our discount cutoff date to be before the 30th as well. Okay. And we can insert in that there. So we can actually pick up all of our discounts, pay all of my discounts first, and then we'll think about paying our due dates afterwards. Okay, so we can start saving ourselves some money in there if we take advantage of those discounts. Okay, you also have an option here. You can take non-qualifying discounts. So if you want to still take those discounts, even though you might be a couple days over that because it didn't quite fall into your check run right there, you can also take your non-qualifying discounts as well. Okay, you always have that option. Now, if you haven't used your discounts before, you might want to check your discount setup because sometimes those discounts are actually tracked inside of your GL and you may or may not want to be tracking those inside of your GL. Okay, so we definitely have those options inside there to help us with those payment terms to make sure that we kind of save our money on that side. Okay, so that's our money going out. Now let's talk about our money coming in, because that's really my favorite part. I just want to have money coming in. I don't really want to pay people. I mean, I do, but we much rather have much more cash flow coming in than going out. Okay, so as you know, your payment terms actually exist inside of your customers as well. You may be extending out those discounts as well if you choose to be doing so. Okay, so you'll notice that you have those discounts inside of your options or your payment terms in here as well. So you can give out the same theory we had in payables. You can actually bring it to your receivable side if you would like to be helping out with your customers and extending out those discounts, maybe just not just taking them advantage on the payable side. You may be also offering them out to your customers as well. You can actually set them up the same way, okay? And you might just be giving a discount on the purchasing line or the sales line, or maybe on the whole kit and caboodle, the discount, the freight, the whole thing, we're going to give it out on, okay? So up to you if you'd like that. You might have also noticed you have a little option here called use customer vendor grace periods for date and end of month payment terms. You can actually set up that if it's within so many days to automatically kind of still keep it within your payment terms, that it's okay if you don't want to, if you're charging people some financing fees for maybe carrying a balance with you. Okay? Now, you might say that's great. I will also need to make sure that I am staying on top of my collections for customers that maybe are going over their due dates, or maybe just to check in with them. We always have our good old statements that we can rely on GP. We put them out at the end of every month to say, this is how much you currently have outstanding with us. Please pay us. Well, you also have the email functionality as well for statements if you want to automate that a little bit as well. Okay. But if we're watching our cash a little bit more closely these days, or maybe we just have some customers that maybe don't behave themselves, always have that in there, is how do we actually take a look at those customers that maybe have some invoices going over? Well, we always have our good old handy smart list. We can always pick up on those due dates. So let's actually go pick out where we can see that. Okay, so inside of our receivables transactions, you'll notice that there's actually one out of the box. Oops, let me make that a little bit bigger here. It's actually called past due customers transactions. Now, of course, you can filter this, slice it, and dice it a little bit more than you might think. But I also added in here some great, so the original transaction amount, if you see this, this is the original amount of the transaction, okay, of the invoice or the credit, whatever it may be. And then there's the current transaction amount. You might say to me, these always seem the same. Why is there a difference? Great question. It looks like when you have this customer's actually paid a portion towards their original amount. So it was originally $5,800. They paid approximately half, and now they actually have $2,200 outstanding. Okay. You also notice here I have my document date and my due date. Okay. So you might actually want to start taking a look at your smart list to see, okay, anyone that's had a due date as of May 1st, show me all those invoices. I really want to start collecting those invoices as of now, okay? So we always have that option to come into smart list. You can pull this, of course, in Excel reporting if you're using that, okay? And you can also use it, of course, in SSRS reports as well, if that's where you're looking for. I like smart lists just because I like to do it as a working list when I used to do collections, when we used to call people and just kind of say you have some invoices outstanding with us, okay? Of course, just like any other smart list, we can pull a bunch of other fields in there as well to help us out with that. Now, if you have some customers who are really not behaving themselves and they're just not paying you, you can also add financing charges as well, okay? For any of those that have never used financing charges, but you're thinking about actually using that clause in the bottom of your invoices that says, you know, if you haven't paid us the next amount of days, we're going to start giving you a finance charge. It is an automated process inside of GP. You do your customers, you do it on any open items, or maybe your balance forward. I like to do it on my open items, okay? So you actually say what your minimum finance charge is. okay, and what their minimum balance is. So if you have a customer that maybe only has, you know, a couple bucks remaining because maybe they accidentally shorted some invoices, you probably don't want to charge them a finance charge. You might want to set a minimum balance in there saying, okay, if they owe me $100 or more, give them a finance charge. Now, what essentially this actually does inside of the system is it goes through all of your customers and says, okay, who has a balance that's more than $100, and process a finance charge on them. And it actually creates a debit note, a special kind of debit note, and puts it onto their account for you and posts it. Okay. Now, of course, if at any time you choose to waive that finance charges because you work it out with your customer, or you just decide to be super nice, if you decide to be super nice, can you talk to my husband about getting a pool? Decide to be super nice to your customer, you can, of course, always void out that finance charge or do a credit note against it and get rid of it the same way we would for anything else inside of GP. Okay, so we always have those options available to us. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and clear this. I don't actually want to charge my customers a financing charge. Okay, so we have kind of these techniques to help us out through there to definitely get our cash flow in, to control our cash flow a little bit more. Okay, and of course, always the reporting to make sure we're sitting in the right place as we go along. Now, one of my favorite things that I do want to just kind of tack on to the end of this is visibility is definitely key if you're going to start using your budgets. If you're already using SSRS reporting, one of the great things you can actually do is you can actually have automated emailing with SSRS reports, and you can have some of those budgets versus actuals maybe going out mid-month just to give your managers a check-in to see where they're standing in their budgets. Maybe they're too far over or they haven't spent enough money. Maybe don't tell them they haven't spent enough money, but you can have those options inside of there. Now, I realize we have 5 minutes left, and Scott might kill me if I go over time.
Thank you, Brittany. That was a fantastic overview for anyone who has, is new to Endeavour. Then you can, we've been around for 30 years now. Advisory services, implementation, and ongoing optimization and support, Dynamics GP, upgrades to Business Central, Nav, Dynamics 365, and obviously upgrades for GP as well for those that are staying on the platform. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to Endeavour Support or contact Trish, James, or Steve, and we're here to help. With that said, have a wonderful day, everyone, and look forward to seeing you on our next Training Tuesdays.